Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Portress, and joining me today, it doesn't matter what dimension he's in, he's still grumpy. Sweet Sean Zakovacs from the internet.
I'm not that grumpy.
Well, he's grumpy enough, you know, but hey, who could be grumpy today, boys and girls? Because my, oh my, we have another animated Spider-Man movie in theaters, and it is, it's ripping up, boy, in all so many ways. It has gotten a lot of box office. I don't know the exact numbers in front of me, but last number I looked at was mighty high. So there's breaking records for that. They're breaking records for the length of time we're making people sit in theaters, apparently. Is that right?
Yeah, this is the longest American animated movie of all time by like 4 minutes.
Oh, kick it, Beauty and the Beast. You ain't got nothing no more.
Man.
I think somebody pointed out a thing where, like, you know, the original animated Little Mermaid was like an hour and 31 minutes, and the new one was like 2:10, and you're like, why? What for? Why?
Oi.
You can't get that many Lin-Manuel Miranda songs in there to make that worth an extra 45 minutes.
You know, the weird thing about that movie is that across the board, this is what I've found is that basically, if you are a lady and you see that movie, you think it's great. But if you're a man and you see that movie, you do not like it. And it seems to be all across the board. Like maybe I've heard 10 people talk about this movie. Mm-hmm. Let's say five ladies, 5 dudes, and across the board. That has been the experience I have had with people speaking about that movie.
For me, it's just like it's all the live action animated Disney stuff. I'm like, I don't know why I haven't watched any of them. They're like, have you seen any of them? Do you like any of them? I'm like, I haven't really watched them because I'm like, I watched the animated thing. It's darn near perfect. Why do I need to see that in a kind of weird lifelike CGI thing? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
The only thing that I watched, and it was more out of just wanting to see what it looked like, was The Jungle Book.
Yeah, I think that was the only one that I saw.
Because I heard that it was shot in a parking lot and stuff, and I was like, well, what does that look like?
And Christopher Walken is an orangutan. You have to watch this.
And I didn't even watch the whole thing because I've already seen The Jungle Book, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, so that's how they're doing it. And then Disney was just like, you know what, we're going to do this with literally everything because all we keep doing is making money and everyone's complaining, but everyone's still seeing the movies. So we're just going to keep making these. We're going to make remakes of the remakes we've already made.
Yeah, that one's insane. But I mean, talk about going to the well. I mean, Sony knows what Sony knows, and what Sony knows is we're putting out the stuff that's profitable, and that's got to do with Spider-Man because by God, they are like, you remember when, like, what was it, at least 5-6 plus years ago or something, maybe it was longer than that at this point, but they were talking like, listen, man, Marvel's just going to get it from Sony. They're going to get Spider-Man back. They're just going to pay him an untold sum of money. And everybody was like, yeah, this is surely going to happen. And it's like, and the amount of coin that they are producing, they are holding on to that tighter than the Infinity Stones, man. They're like, no, sir, this is not going anywhere out of our grasp. It is making far too much money. And as we'll talk about with Across the Spider-Verse, they go in Spider-Man deep on this big boy. It's Spider-Man all the way down and then some. But before we do get into that, we do want to say a thank you to everyone who supports this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get the pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. In the Dinger Zone this week, we're going to be talking all about our favorite different kinds of Spider-Mans because, boy, oh boy, as this movie has shown us, there's a lot to choose from in the old Spider-Verse here. And we want to say thank you to all the folks that support this show that also have other shows. And I want to talk about my buddies over at the All-American Spook Show because they have a great summer series that they are just starting this week. It's the Summer Disaster series, and they're starting out with Godzilla King of the Monsters. So,
oh, that's cool.
Any kind of horror movies or action type movies and stuff like that that have to deal with, disasters of some sort of, kind of horror type style. They're covering it this week, this month rather, all on their podcast and YouTube and all that kind of good stuff. So go check out our buddies over at the All American Spook Show. And if you can't support the show, just give us a 5-star review on iTunes, aka Humdinger.
Humdinger.
We really appreciate that, and it means so much. And All right, let's get into it. Here is the IMDb plotline for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. As we know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. Miles Morales catapults across the multiverse where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. When the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles must redefine what it means to be a hero. This is written by Phil Lord and Chris Miller of Lego fame, and in a bit more of David Callahan. He wrote on the other Spider-Man movie as well as also the new Mortal Kombat movie and Shang-Chi. That dude's got a lot of range, I think. Mm-hmm. Directed by Joaquim Dos Santos. He's a longtime DC animation guy. He also did Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. Kemp Powers, who wrote Soul last year, which was fantastic. I really liked Soul. If you haven't seen that, please do check that out. And Justin K. Thompson, who worked on a little movie called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. So we got some pretty hot topic animation guys over there. Here's what time it is. Adam and Sean's. Pretty good, right?
He's doing it live.
Doing it live for you people.
Yowza, that guy's a pro.
There is a lot of comic book stuff in here, and it is a shame because Bruce Leslie would probably take at least half this movie's length to tell us about every single possible thing that could connect. But my guess is probably numero uno because he was the teaser trailer in the last film and the big kind of guy that was all in the trailer for this film and whatnot. Spider-Man 2099. What's your relationship like with 2099? Because I was reading comics at the time, but like obviously I was a couple years younger and everything, and as was the want in those times, the Marvel covers were all fantastic. We were in just this 90s era level of art and stuff, and the stories were a lot of kind of crap if we're completely honest with ourselves. And so while they may have looked cool, maybe some of us didn't read those as much, but I think you guys read more Spider-Man 2099 certainly than I did. Because we all looked at the cover and thought, this looks cool, but it ain't the Spider-Man that I know, and then we kind of pushed it aside.
Well, Spider-Man 2099 had two of my favorite creators at the time at the helm of it. And so like the first, I read a lot. Like I read it way more than probably people should have because, like just kind of like the first two arcs of that series were amazing. And then it started to fall off a cliff. I heard that by the end it got great again, but at that point, like I was too, I wasn't reading comic books at that point. And so, Rick Leonardi was the artist, and Peter David was the writer.
Yeah, you
get those two people together on the same book, I'm going to be reading it because at the time, you're talking late 90s. It was mid 90s, late 90s,
mid 90s. Yeah,
it was. There's no way I'm not reading these. And Peter David had just come off his epic Incredible Hulk run, and that was great. And Rick Leonardi, I can't remember where I saw his art first, but I can remember buying. Like I wasn't somebody who bought comic book posters because I liked girls and I wanted them to not be flipped out when they came.
They usually go, "What is this? I got to run the other direction. No, thank you, please."
Right.
Yeah, you're
that isn't really the case anymore, but at the time, that totally was the case. But I liked this one poster by Rick Leonardi so much that I bought it and put it in my room at my parents' house. Nice. And with no apologies to it. It was so good. It wasn't a Spider-Man 2099. It was a original flavored Spider-Man.
Oh,
but the art was so good on it that when I heard that he was going to be doing the art for Spider-Man 2099, I was like, well, I'm all in on that, because unlike what was happening at the time with everyone trying to basically ape what Todd McFarlane had done 10 years previous, Rick Leonardi had like really sharp lines. And he had, and like things are a little more boxy and things are a little more angled. Mm. Whereas with Todd McFarlane, it's just about how much detail you can get on each frame. And so that's what I really liked about Leonardi, was that he was kind of a different artist. I will say that the Spider-Man 2099 in Across the Spider-Verse is close to what I remember Spider-Man 2099 being, because he is more serious than Peter. because there's a lot more going on in his life than there is in Peter's. And Peter's always dealing with crap, but the level of crap that Miguel O'Hara has to deal with is completely different.
Yeah, it's a little more monumental and world shifting, especially like in this case. So it's like, all right, you can't meet with your parents. Well, that's lovely. I'm dealing with the collapse of everything.
I couldn't believe that they left the vampirism in this movie. I was really surprised when I saw that moment, because it's something that people kind of ignored about that character, is that he does bite things.
It was like we don't talk about that.
Yeah, and so to have that in this movie was a pleasant surprise. And I will tell you, I love, if I hadn't made this clear, I love Spider-Man 2099. I love the look of the character. I like that that it's sort of Spider-Man. It's supposed to be Spider-Man.
It was a weird design. You're like, it's like Spider-Man meets the Punisher meets Magneto, and you're like, what am I looking at? With Tron involved, is sure. It's like, what is this?
Right,
but it did look cool. It was like,
yes,
it looks bad, but so good. It's as 90s as it gets.
Yeah. And, when Deadpool is created and they basically steal Spider-Man's costume, they just took the webbing off of it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it was like, we know that that's Spider-Man. You don't have to pretend that you didn't steal this from Spider-Man. But when you look at Spider-Man 2099, the difference is we know what Spider-Man looks like, so we're going to do the inverse of that, and you're still going to understand that this is Spider-Man. And it's just so cool. It looks like the future. You know what I mean? Like when you looked at him, it was like, man, that is a state-of-the-art costume right there.
It's so bizarre what we have done and had the ability to do with, Ditko's original, creation to literally everything that you see in this movie. It's kind of astounding on an iconography level what Spider-Man has accomplished in, 50, 60 years.
Yeah, you talking about how Sony is never going to give over the reins of Spider-Man. Basically, Marvel is going to have to wait the 40 years or so left until it becomes public domain to put Spider-Man in all their stuff and not have to worry about it.
But Disney goes, but wait a minute. They look at somebody else and go like, you can't hold on this copyright forever. And they go, what about that mouse you got over there? They're like, shut up.
That's not far away, though.
I know it's. I think they're going to fight it some. They're going to come. They got too much money. They're going to overcome.
They're going to try
somehow,
to, for sure.
Somehow, I don't know. Well, if that a little bit wasn't enough to get everybody psyched up on this 2.5 hour half of film, let me clue you in, because this sucker's got everything. Welcome to a Sony movie. Have you got a PS5 yet? What about your Sony laptop bio open? Huh? How about those Boss headphones? So why doesn't Sony make a cell phone anymore? Oh, I'm so sorry, Sony. We got Glenn and Captain Stacy in watercolor. Oscar Isaac. You still don't know what ethnicity he is, do you? No, you don't. That's right, Gen X and elder millennials. Unite. We got your 90s fanzine right here. Spider-Man 29 and 99 is in the house. And you know what? It's about to get moody. We got Peter B. Parker back in tow with Child this time. We got Spider-Punk Peter parked car. VR Spider-Girl, T-Rex Spider-Man, Ben Reilly is here, and he's as 90s as you can get, and it's all glorious. We got miles and miles and miles of Spider-Man, get it? J.K. Simmons is the only J. Jonah Jameson we will ever need. We got Da Vinci Vulture, Dopinder shows up, which is fun. Debbie Downer, we have 3 Banksy name drops. Did Banksy direct this thing? It feels like Banksy might have directed this. We got a Jeff Koons rip needed. That's all for my art segment, lovers there. We got time travel bracelets, pregnant Spider-Woman on a motorcycle. Bet you didn't have that on your bingo card, did you? We got Dark Garfield, editor's notes of villain is the spot. Kind of amazing. Spider-Man gets canceled, Jeopardy, the Captain's Curse, cameos galore, including Lego and the Venom convenience store lady. This movie has everything, and I may literally mean that this time.
I could not remember where I knew that lady from Thankfully, I figured it out before the scene ended, because it would have kind of ruined the movie for me, because I would have been thinking, where do I know that lady from?
I
And
felt like
then
I was the only one in the theater laughing my brains out. I'm like, does no one else? No one else is getting this. Just me? Okay. I think this is hysterical. And I love how we don't reference back to anything Venom specific. I just like, good on you, movie. Love it. Love it so much.
if we can speak generally about this movie first. First of all, I like the movie. I like the movie a great deal. But how dare you? How dare you make this movie? How dare you make this movie and then have it be 2 parts? How dare you, Sony?
Can I also say that, like, and this is probably subject to change, but I think I read that they're planning on the next chapter to be released in March 2024, and I think that's a giant mistake.
It is. It's 2024 Beyond the Spider-Verse.
That is a huge mistake. If they were any smart, they would go kind of Matrix, Lord of the Rings style. But even like the Matrix was better, because when they did 2 and 3, they did them like 1 at the beginning of the year and then 1 towards the end of the year. So if you've got something that connects like that, I think that is a really tough thing to have that dangling participle out there for a darn near year.
Man, to end it on the cliffhanger they did too, it's just like, man. And here's the thing is that, like, spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a little late for that.
It's a Hapsy movie.
But, it's one of those things where it's like, at least with the Avengers movies, like, we knew there was going to be a second part. So when it ends on a cliffhanger, you're like, oh, okay. So you go in knowing that there's going to be a second part to this. I did not know that.
Now, I will say this. I think I remember vaguely hearing about it being a 2-parter, and then about an hour and a half into this movie, I'm just going, no, they're not. And it kind of, this is the Return of the King of Spider-Man movies, because I swear to you, I thought this thing ended 15 times, and it kept on going, and I'm just like, oh, nope, we're still, and it feels like they're kind of still running towards a finish line that that they're not going to get to the end of.
Man, when they hit the beginning of the beginning of the 3rd act, and it's like hour 2, I was like, there's no, how are they going to finish this? This is going to be the most disappointing ending to a movie ever.
Yeah, it would have felt like, there was like a cutaway screen, and then it had like, sometime later, and it just comes back, and all we see is the aftermath. Is that the joke, Lego Boys? Because it feels like you might do something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. So, let's, let me get that part out of the way, is that I'm so mad at this movie for the way that they did this.
It could have been. It could have said something like part 1 or something like that.
This is straight garbage. Like, that makes me so angry. I got out of the movie theater angry, even though I enjoyed the movie, because of this. Like, this is not a good thing. This is a very Sony-ish thing to do. But with that being said, I really like this movie. This movie is, the best way to describe it is overwhelming. This is a very overwhelming movie. There's so much depth and layers to this movie that it's hard to follow at times. That's how much is going on in it. Yeah, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's okay to be overwhelmed by movies sometimes.
Well, I mean, in these days, I mean, it makes for rewatchability and stuff. Before this movie, I rewatched the last Spider-Verse movie, and really enjoyed it. It held up quite well, and so I was excited to see what they were going to do for this one, and it's more of the same, but still very different at the same time too. And that's when you really got to start to applaud people, especially in superhero and in animation, having both of those things, which can feel like a bit of a hobble at some point, to have it still be familiar to what you saw last time and everything, but still have enough different stuff in it to still feel fresh and new and not rehashed from the last thing that you saw. It takes a talented hand.
And there's so many different styles. Like, that's the part that is pretty incredible to this, is that it feels like an old skateboarding movie or, like documentary, where they're using different different styles of camera to shoot the thing
Mm-hmm.
is what this movie felt like to me. Are those early, like mid 80s, early 90s skateboarding videos, because it feels like it's taped together and snapped together, and that's kind of the charm of this thing, is that it feels the most punk rock of anything. And I'm not even talking about punk rock Spider-Man. I mean, just the movie itself feels very punk rocky. And that's what I really like about it, is that it feels like, for as huge as this movie is, and it is massive, it feels like a stripped down version of Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And to have it be like, well, let's go backwards for a second. So, Into the Spider-Verse was such a surprise to everyone that when for me specifically, when I saw that movie, I was so shocked with how much I liked it and how good it was. So that they can't pull that trick off this time. They can't surprise me and hit me in the side of the head with, by the way, this is made by Lord and Miller. You're going to forget that Lord and Miller are great again. and so, this time around going into Across the Spider-Verse, I don't have that same thing happen where you like, you're not going to surprise me this time. I know that you guys know what you're doing, but instead what they do is they pull off a trick that I thought was impossible, which is that they set up a bunch of new characters. The second half of the movie, because the first half of the movie, which is way too long.
This could be 4 movies, I would bet you.
The first act of this movie is way too long, where they pull out all of the tension and trauma and drama of Miles' personal life, which is fine. You need to have that, but it goes on and on and on, and they could have cut that by half, and it still would be great. However, what I'm trying to get to, my point, because I have one, is that they pull off a trick that I thought was impossible, which is that they introduce brand new people to you. You don't have any introduction to them when you first meet them. And it's immediately a big deal when you see them. Jess Jones, who's the pregnant black lady with the afro on the motorcycle. Mm-hmm. The gravitas of that character immediately is apparent to you. Like, the second you see her, oh, this person is a big deal.
I want to talk about that. One of the reasons I think definitely behind that is what an amazingly designed character. Yes. Just from the comic get-go, when you see it, just from like the design of the shape of the character, what she looks like, the colors on the outfit and everything, it is so boldly and just genuine comic that I love it so much. And you're right, that again, and building upon that Spider-Man iconography again, coming in there, it's like, even if you don't know, in a way, you kind of know. You kind of get it. Like, it's like the language is all there, and you're not even having to tell people that. And it's astounding that it works as well as it does. But you're right. You just sit there and go, oh, I kind of already get this character right away. Yes.
Yeah. And like when it comes to Spider-Punk, like that character immediately, everything about that character the second that you see him, by the way he's animated, by the way he speaks. And am I wrong? Is that Daniel Kaluuya?
Yeah,
doing the voice.
So awesome.
I who knew that dude had that speed in him? But there we are.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it was more energetic than we kind of see from him in a lot of ways, but still like laid back and cool. And that, like, I love that. How are you even more cool with your mask off?
What does he say back to him? It's something like, some of us don't try.
No, it was just like, I'm always this cool or whatever it was. Yeah. But it was just kind of like that. Yeah, listen, I'm always mask on, mask off. It doesn't matter. I'm the baddest. And you're like, yeah, he kind of is.
Man, so
I
cool.
love, and that's another thing that, like, something that absolutely should not work, but how they pull it off is astounding. And they've been doing it, honestly, some sense, the Lego movie, but integrating everything, all different types of animation, those animations within themselves, and even interacting with live action stuff, and it never looks weird. It never looks forced. It looks exactly what it's supposed to be, and as if these things from these inner dimensions can live in that same space, but yet still look different and still be able to interact. The Punk Spider-Man's very, indicative of that. It's unreal how it all works, and I don't know how they juggle those balls in the air, but by George, they've done it.
Well, you have to know exactly what you want, right? This isn't something where you can just like, you know what, we'll figure it out on the day.
Yeah, you don't look at your guy and just go like, do something like this. No, you're going to have to tell them what this is, because this is not normal.
Right. And there's a shorthand behind the wheel again. It's something where, again, you need to convey to everyone who works beneath you exactly what it is that you want in this situation. And they made it work again and again and again. And, there's a bit of magic in this movie as well as in the first one. But they do the thing where they hold back on Miles. They don't reintroduce Miles until 15 minutes into this movie.
A wildly long cold open. The Gwen cold open is like 10, like you said, 10, 15 minutes.
And don't get me wrong, I think Gwen is great. I think she's a great character.
But it subverts everything from go, which I think is a very smart move of just kind of like, well, let's take a step back and realize that, like, again, from the multidimensional reality of everything, this is another person's perspective. Now we'll come back and we'll meet with the guy that, we saw in the last movie and stuff, but now get to know this girl like you got to know him in that first movie. And I think that's a great storytelling technique.
I agree. And something they do very well in this franchise as well is the multicultural aspect to these movies. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like quite frankly, what Marvel does, where it feels like sometimes with Marvel's casting, it's like, hey, look how progressive we are. Am I right?
Yeah.
And there is none of that here. It just feels organic and normal. And like, I think people who are even screaming woke or go woke and go broke, even they would watch something like this and be like, this is great. I really do.
And here's the thing, I think there's always a handful of ding dongs out there who will, just be like, well, this is a little, no.
That's what we should have named this podcast, as a handful of ding dongs.
Handful of ding dongs.
Yeah.
But this movie, and I one of the things that I applaud this movie for is being a PG-rated movie.
Yeah.
It's for being that thing that, and it's popped up in the last movie, popped up in this movie, but that, approved by the Comics Code in a weird way. That kind of means something to people like us, and what this was for anybody that's just like who could possibly think that, it went all woke or something. It didn't, because it never feels like, it feels like this thing was made for everyone and everything, all ages. And when I was there at both screenings, guess what I saw? Everybody from all walks of life, young, old, every race, everyone is there, because it's a thing that connects to everybody. There's a little something in this movie for every person, and but not in a checkbox kind of way. That's the important part. It doesn't feel like it's a checkbox, like, well, we had to have this in there. No, this is based on a lot of, long history of Spider-Man stuff. And, while it's not direct adaptations of any book or any particular story or anything, there's still stuff pulled from years and years of Spider-Man. So it's not like we're pulling this out of our butts for diversity's sake with some of these things. It's long-established characters, some of these.
So I'm going to bring something up now that I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, and I don't mean it to be. I think these movies have the multiverse. Marvel needs to get away from it. DC, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because they've got the Flash coming up.
There's
here.
A whole thing, yeah, we don't know.
But this franchise has the multiverse. They figured it out. They've made it fun and interesting and cool, and everything about it is basically perfect.
There's also something about it being in animated form, though, that I think informs and helps it and allows it to be that thing. It feels more comic booky in a way, and on account of that, it feels like it allows it to be that more.
But even I think it has something to do with the character of Spider-Man himself, because No Way Home also has the same thing, where the multiverse aspect of that movie, even though that is a Marvel production, it might have something to do with the character, because those three Spider-Men in that movie showing up is special and unique and great. And this has that same charm of multidimensional. The rest of Marvel does not have that. When like I am almost certain that if we have another thing like Ant-Man Quantumania, where like, oh, we're talking about multiverses still, people are going to just shut down and be done.
It's going to need to be fun and interesting and dynamic, because like as long as this movie is like, it's rarely ever sitting still and being super boring.
Well, that's Lord and Miller. That's Lord and Miller for you.
Exactly. I mean, they know how to jam pack it.
Yeah, they're so kinetic with their filmmaking, and even something that like 21 Jump Street was a revelation of, oh, these guys really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But to have a sequel to that movie, to have a sequel that is also really good,
so good.
I'm not entirely sure why they got fired from Solo. My guess is that somebody was like, this is far too jokey.
Really digging around with stuff, and they're like, no, this is too much.
But the part that they're forgetting is that Lord and Miller first are storytellers, great storytellers. With everything that's happening in this movie, when the flip happens, when you learn the thing in this movie at the beginning of the third act. It is shocking. It is shocking when it's like, oh no, that's like having that flip happen where Gwen and Jake Johnson Spider-Man, Peter B. Parker, is that it? I can't remember.
I think it's B. Yeah,
Peter B. Parker. They know what has to happen. And once you learn that, it's so surprising that they're in on the whole thing.
I love that aspect. I love the fact that we had to sit down and talk about how, like, the crux of what makes Spider... And again, just this is the beauty of it as well, is sitting down and really, for the non, super comic people, breaking down why Spider-Man really works.
Yeah.
The reason that, this story has been told and has had these iterations and can have these iterations is because in so many ways, and Stan Lee said it himself, like anybody could be behind the mask. And that's continued on with this, and it still works. And I again don't know how they keep doing the magic trick over and over, and I just go like, it's still good. I like.
Well, they change enough of it, like power sets, costume, but not the essence of the character, right?
Because it's so
Miles
deep.
Miles Morales, he's certainly not Peter Parker, but it's the same thing where he's a little put upon. He's not the coolest kid in school. He is clever. He is smart, but he is also a bit of a loser in both cases. Like they get that part right every time. And even when they come across the Indian Spider-Man, who is by far the coolest of all the Spider-Man, even he is a little dopey, where he has to have that conversation with the girl where he's like, I couldn't possibly know you because I'm Spider-Man. How would I know who you are? Like that kind of thing. It's really funny.
But I thought that was such a smart and awesome idea that we've met this guy 5 seconds essentially into him being Spider-Man. And so much so he's the early Spider-Man that his tragedy, his Uncle Ben, so to speak, has not even happened yet.
Yeah.
And then being able to change that and stuff, and having, the idea of the what do they call it, like canon event or something like that, but
Right,
where
canon event.
it's bringing off canon stuff again. It's explaining the multiverse stuff in a much better way, in a more entertaining way than the Marvel stuff seems to be doing.
Agreed. They also are really smart about things. Like, we're going to bring in the Scarlet Spider, which is going to make everyone's eyes roll. So what we're going to do is, not only are we going to make him kind of funny and voiced by Andy Samberg, we're going to have him be 90s Scarlet Spider.
Yes.
Where we're not trying to make him cool. And then on top of that, we're going to make him the lackey of Spider-Man 2099. All of these things are really smart ways of making all of this happen. And I don't know if the people at Marvel are smart enough at this point to make these choices. And it's what makes it so very interesting. Because when I saw Scarlet Spider show up, I knew that they were probably going to make jokes about him, like Scrappy Doo in the old Scooby-Doo movies from the 2000s. I figured that's probably what was going to happen. But the part I didn't see is that, he is basically the number 2, for lack of a better term, villain, because he's not really a villain, because they all think they're doing the correct thing.
Yeah.
But he's on the other side, is the best way to put it. He's the number 2 on the other side. And it makes sense to make him that, because people don't like him, except for Bruce's kid. Bruce's kid thinks Ben Reilly's great.
There are Ben Reilly fans that are a little bit upset on the internet about this portrayal, and I'm just like, y'all got to lighten up. First and foremost, it's beautiful, and it's like, because the way that it's drawn and so overly muscular 90s,
that Liefeld physique.
It's just
so
beautiful, and he's emotional about everything all of the time. It's so good, and I'm just like, if y'all can't step back and laugh at that era of comics a little bit, where's your soul at, dude?
It is,
because it's like, it's fun. I'm sorry, I can look back on dorky things that I saw as a child that I enjoyed and go like, yeah, that's a little dumb, but when I was a kid, what do you want?
Well, I think it's one of those things where, like, this is my guy and don't screw with my guy.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, who would to say if 10, 15, 20 years ago they tried doing this with Spider-Man 2099, how I'd be? I'd probably be a little butthurt about it.
Yeah.
But
no. That's
he's great. Why are you doing this to Miguel? But I love the portrayal of him. I think he's great.
Yeah, it totally works.
And I thought that I was going to be bothered because they keep doing the same thing that they did in the first movie, where they keep going back into the backstory of these characters when the character is big enough to do that too.
Yeah.
But it never got annoying, which I was surprised. I fully expected to be very, very annoyed by it.
It's fun, and then there's like little tiny, gifts for us where they'll plop in like the actual proper cover of the first appearance of these people and stuff. That's just, there's something about that. I love those little level of detail that don't need to be there, but they just go, yep, that's for you. Enjoy that.
And I don't know why it was such a surprise to see Lego Spider-Man in this movie. But man, that made me laugh the most of anything in this movie, I think. Either that or Ben Reilly. One or the other.
I did not. Well, I feel like maybe I saw a picture or something of the Spot. I did not know the Spot was going to end up being like the main villain. It's like, again, so well written to where you go, this is just a stupid, villain of the week kind of thing. And then building off of that and having Jason Schwartzman be the voice was just perfect.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And like, I love the way that the character itself is portrayed, how it looks like kind of a, the beginning sketches of an artist is, it's always kind of behind the dots and everything. So when that goes away, you still see the empty form there, and him getting that power really fast and then sucking himself into his own universe. Like, when's the last time we had a villain with an interesting arc like this? It doesn't happen too often, not in the movies we tend to watch, at least.
Well, they do they do an interesting thing here, that the trilogy of Spider-Man is it 3 that they made of the middle Spider-Man, Sony Spider-Man movies?
I think they only made 2.
They only made 2.
Oh yeah, the Garfield ones. Are we talking about?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield ones. That's right. They only made 2 of them. They wanted to make 3, and everybody was like, "No, thank
no,
you.
thank you. We're good."
Where you have these villains who are basically goofs. Like you look at the Rhino in the one Andrew Garfield movie where he's just a goof, and you start Jason Schwartzman's The Spot as a goof, and he progressively gets a little bit scarier and a little bit scarier. Where by the end of the movie, you're like, "Oh man, that dude's a real like leveled villain.
Yeah,
this guy's gonna take a bunch of people out."
He got really smart and was just like, but again, when you see he hasn't had his powers for too long when he's robbing the convenience store because he still doesn't quite understand exactly how everything works. But like once he starts to get a taste of what that could do, again, it's that villain having power and stuff and going, wait a minute, I was kind of crapped on and everything. Now I have, this advantage. And then that little bit of power just builds and builds and builds and thus ultimately still drives somebody nuts. And Jason Schwartzman's a great one to do that because he has that kind of range that can go from this soft kind of then up to, you can see him at a fever pitch, at an anger and stuff like that. And it works really, really well.
It does. And we've got to talk about the brilliant stroke in this movie where they set up all the information for you, where you think what they're basically doing is retconning the spider that bites Miles.
Yes.
You think that that's what all this is that they're setting it up and they're retconning this to make it something that it isn't. Right. And they set it up, and it's almost eye rolling, but not.
Mm-hmm.
And then the flip happens at the turn of this movie where they are judging the spider powers based on the universe it's from. So Miles getting bit by a spider in the different universe from a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up going back to the universe that is not his universe. It's the one that his spider is from that makes him Spider-Man.
Back to universe 42. Yeah.
It is such good writing, and it is parsed out so well that when it happens, I had no idea what was about to happen until they drop the bomb on you. Mm-hmm. And it is so well done that I literally just started shaking my head. Yes, like this is. Yep, that's how you do that. That's how you plot that out. It is amazingly done, and it is so surprising, and it is so it hits you it hits you up the side of the head. You don't see it coming, but it makes perfect sense when it does.
Yeah, it's like
because they've been dropping hints the entire movie that this spider is from a different place than Miles is from.
There's just some point where I was sitting there going, I go, what? We're Back to the Future 2, everybody.
Yeah.
We Back to the Future 2 in such a great way, and it has that same kind of like, oh, wait a minute. No, this is not what we signed up for at all. We think we're home free, and it is back to the slog. And I was like, oh, that's so much fun. And I love, again, it's that great kind of the wind blows the right way kind of things. So because the spider doesn't bite that Miles in that universe, then he does not become Spider-Man, but then subsequently becomes the Prowler because then Dad does die. And like,
yeah,
what amazingly smart writing. I'm like, okay, you know what? That's why these guys keep getting hired, I think.
Yeah. Just having those dominoes fall. Where so Spider goes to the wrong universe, bites the wrong Miles. So Miles' dad in the universe that it was supposed to happen, he gets killed in the line of duty. So now Miles is looked after by his uncle. And now his uncle makes him a criminal and makes him the Prowler. And because he's Miles, he's still got that artistic streak to him. So his costume as the Prowler looks vastly different than his uncle's did because he's made his own logo. He's made his own costume. It is just the best. It is the best.
I saw a little video online, like you'll see it for like maybe half a second or something, but like earlier on than you would expect, you do kind of see what is more than likely, alternate Miles earlier on in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, they were still even planting it then. Let's talk about dads for a hot second because
Sure.
got some good dads up. I forgot that he did it in the last one, and he's just this. That Brian Tyree Henry is like had an amazing career. Did you know this guy only started acting in like 2007?
I did not know that. Really?
Only in 2007. He's 41. He's like a month older than me. And what an amazing career this guy has had in a very short amount of time.
Agreed. I thought that he might have come from like British television or something.
Yeah.
But maybe he has. But he seems like he's been around forever. But I guess that's not the case.
No, not at all. I'm like, but he's so good. He's so good. He brings, like in the first one and in this, just a humanity to that character that you're just like, you can't help but love both of his parents because they're done so well. And Shea Winningham as Captain Stacy and everything, also fantastic. He's good in everything that he does, and like it's one of those you don't even really recognize his voice in this, but because it just blends so darn well.
I didn't know it was him until I looked up on IMDb.
Oh, a couple other fun things. Obviously, we've been spoiler deep for the whole show here, but Mahershala Ali coming back with the Prowler, I was like, first of all, because when that was like the Joker getting killed, man. No, I take that back. That's like Mahershala Ali getting killed in Luke Cage, where you're just like, you killed the best thing. Why did you do that? What a mistake you've made. But no, we brought him back for it. So that's kind of cool. I really like that. They
didn't know what they had when they did that,
No, I don't think they were just like, oh my God, we made such a mistake. We should have flipped that. And then Luke Cage would still be running to this day. You mark my words. Rachel Dretch cameo in this, just looking like her and just that
character looks exactly like
fantastic her. Animation. It made me so happy. But again, it's a scene that doesn't, in a 2.5 hour movie, doesn't need to be there, but it's so good that it is. And it also talks about how it is important here that what we're doing with Miles is writing our own story. This is not the Peter Parker story, and that's one of the things that they try to get across in this movie is that, like, while we have all these infinite universes and all these things, we have the things that connect us, but they're also not all the same thing either. Mm-hmm. They're all very different. But you can each be your own unique and individual person as well. And that to me is one of the keys to making this thing work. Because also at the same time too, you never resent any of the other Spider-Men that are there. You don't always be like, I want to get back to this particular Spider-Man. And something I think people were afraid of is that we had a large select members of the team from the previous movie not show up in this movie, except for maybe, a cameo here and there from one or two of them. But people were like, oh no, we're not going to have Spider-Man Noir. Spider-Pig's not going to be in this. The other Penny Parker and all that kind of stuff, not going to be in here for the most part. People were like, oh no, what are we going to do? But like they did such a great job just kind of filling that out and like really giving us these characters, the world that these characters live in, and still never feel like we're missing out on anything. And we got enough of the other weirdo Spider-Men from all the other universes that it never really felt like any of that stuff was, lacking, which I was happy for sure.
One of the things that you spoke about last week when we were talking about looking forward to seeing this movie was that when you watched Into the Spider-Verse, one of the benefits of seeing it on streaming is that you can pause it because there's a lot happening in the background. Mm-hmm. Specifically with this movie, they know that you're going to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So when he's walking through, I don't know what to call that, the Spider Police Station, whatever you want to call that
like
thing.
Spider-Man 2099's world, I think that specifically is at that point.
And everyone's a Spider-Man, and so they have tags over each one of the Spider people's heads that there's so many of them that you have to pause it because you couldn't possibly just catch them all with your eyes.
You're not getting that 480p DVD. I don't think so. You're going up to that 4K because you won't be able to read that crap.
So seeing that, when this comes out to streaming, I'm excited for that because I want to see the deep backgrounds of those moments specifically. It will be very cool.
Yeah, there's everything from, like I said, T-Rex Spider-Man to horse and rider Spider-Man, you name it. It is in there. The Full Metal. It's just what a great silly world Spider-Man has kind of also led at the same time too. When you really think about it, and you keep going out and you keep pulling out and you see more and more of these things, and like the majority, if not all of them, are based upon some crap that's happened. And that's the most insane part of all of it. It's just like no. All this is real. That's real stuff. I don't, that's a Bruce Leslie can tell you more about that than we can, but assuredly this is real things, and it's kind of crazy. Haley Steinfeld didn't talk about her, but her and Shamik Moore, fantastic. I couldn't think of any other two that I would love to have in this. They're so good in their respective roles.
I mean, it's part of what Lord and Miller does so well also, and whoever they have as their casting agent, their movies are always cast really well. I mean, whether it's Shamik Moore or Haley Steinfeld or Oscar Isaac, or I mean, even lady from Scrubs as his mom, doing the voice of his mom. Mm-hmm. Like all of these people are so well cast in their parts. Having Issa Rae as Jess Drew, the pregnant lady on the motorcycle, like great casting. Mm-hmm. And it's just all across the board. Like I wouldn't have thought about casting the guy driving the cab in Deadpool as the Indian Spider-Man. That would never have occurred to me to do that.
Can I say that I'm so happy? Like I'm so happy that it's like him and not we're not just shoving the old what's his face into Camille Nanjiani in yet another role that's like okay, like listen, there's more of them out there. It's I don't know what you know about the country, quite populated, so
couple billion of them,
couple of them banging around there. It's not just one guy, that whole area, so feel free to branch out a little bit, and I'm glad they did. Depinder did a fantastic job. I like that guy a whole bunch.
Yeah, he did.
But it was this whole thing again. Surprising how fun it was, well over long for what it should be. But again, Lord and Miller just kind of showing that there's a reason that they kind of keep getting all this work.
And they're flexing muscle, which they kind of had to do after Solo, right? I mean, you get fired from something as high profile as that, there's people are going to ask questions of like, oh, are they losing their minds?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And when you go over here and just go like, oh, excuse me, let me just spike this football in front of your face.
Yeah. Let me show you how wrong-headed us being fired was.
Yeah. To some degree, you will always kind of go back in your brain and go like, what would that Lord Miller Han Solo would have been like? I don't know.
It's one of the things we're never going to see, man. It's going to be the other actor Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. Yeah. We're never going to see that.
Yeah, you got like 2 or 3 stills, but that's about all you're going to get out of it. That and some stories, because they ain't letting that out there. All right, before we get to our final review, we have to ask how this 2.5-hour movie relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Oh. And before I get into it, though, I want to say this. You know that part in I think it's Endgame. Yeah, it is. It's Endgame, where Iron Man turns to Doctor Strange and he mouths, "Is this the one?"
Yeah.
Is this the right universe we're in? And he turns to Doctor Strange, turns back to Tony Stark, and he puts up his one finger and he nods. That's literally what this felt like, finding the Stallone connection this week, because there's roughly 15,000 people who worked on this thing. And so when I finally found someone who's actually worked on both movies, on a Stallone movie and on this movie, it felt like I had just found gold. So here we go. How do you feel about the French horn, Mr. Stallone? I ask because this week's Stallone connection is French hornist, French horner, French horn blower, Richard Bissell. He played that brassy thing on Across the Spider-Verse and in a movie you were totally in, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a movie we reviewed here on HMP a month ago on episode 466, but I don't need to tell you that. I'm sure you already know since you're a fan and everything. Anyway, back to Richard Bissell. If you're anything like me, you probably didn't realize how often the French horn is used in movies. And Richard Bissell has over 609 credits on his resume when it comes to films. Dating back to a movie called Monsignor in 1982. What was his next movie? I'm very glad you asked, because a very small independent feature in 1983 called Return of the Jedi.
Oh.
10 years later, he worked with you again on Cliffhanger. This guy has been working almost as long as you have, Mr. Stallone. The only time I've ever noticed the French horn is during the theme to Star Trek The Next Generation. And the only reason why I know that is because I knew a French horn player who would wait for the Star Trek Next Generation theme to come on so she could hear the French horn part being played. When I asked her why she didn't buy the soundtrack to the show, she turned and looked at me like I had just asked her if she would like to join me in dumpster diving for babies. Please note, Mr. Stallone, I didn't say she was a friend. I only said that I knew her. We'll leave it at that. One thing I can be sure of is that girl whose name I don't remember would love to have the career of Richard Bissell, playing the French horn and probably doing what he wanted since he was a child. Takes a special breed of child to dream about playing the French horn professionally, but who am I to judge? As people with no imagination seem to say these days, go ahead and live your bliss. Every person below the age of 30 also always says, let's go, and 10 out of 10 with everything all the time, always. It's like dealing with a hive mind. Anyway, that's this week's Stallone Connection. I hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, Sweet Shawnzy from the internet.
I want everybody to know, like, French Hornets is not where you're going to see most other people when they would put together their Stallone Connection. No, sir. French horn ain't the way people. But some people would just say, "Oh, David Callahan, the guy who wrote The Expendables, who also wrote this movie, would be the easy choice to go to." But no. You shut your mouth over here. We do things a little different.
I think I used him last time into the Spider-Verse. I think
I wouldn't be surprised. He did work on all of those things, so. Nothing, can't blame them there. All right, here at Here Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. I will go first. I enjoyed this movie. I would have enjoyed it if my sound was better. I went in a Dolby Atmos theater and everything, and it was not loud enough for my liking. I went to a second screening today to try to remedy that and everything, and nothing doing. And so I can't wait to watch this in a place where I can actually hear it properly and be really excited about it. That said, even with that, I really enjoyed the movie. I had a lot of fun. It's extremely long. Like I said, I don't know if I should have said it in this show or in the Dinger Zone and everything, but this was the Return of the King. I thought this thing was ending 15 different times, and boy, oh boy, it just kept on going. And then we get to the end, and it just goes to be continued. And the fact that we got to wait a little over a year has got me a little miffed. That said, the movie is fantastic. The highest of Tim Drake's. The only reason I feel like I can't get it all the way up to a Damian Wayans just on account of running time, and it's while 2.5 hours, it's still only half a movie. Sean?
And that is the exact reason why I can't give it a Dick Grayson. This movie is so unbelievably hyper creative, and it takes huge chances. It expects you to be smart enough to know where we're going. Half the time, you just have to, they're like, hey, you just need to trust us. Just keep coming. These are all the things that I love with really good filmmakers. But how dare you only make half a movie? How dare you? And so for me, it is a Tim Drake for those reasons.
And if you brought out the second half in November or December, I think I would be a lot happier. Like, and you could, again, this is why I think Hollywood is so stupid. They just don't understand how, like, people think or whatever. It's just like, put this out a couple months later for the sequel and everything. Have it come out in like December, around November or whatever. Start hyping it up yet again. Have double or triple screenings of all the things whatever. Hype people up for it, but don't just say, now you're gonna have to wait a year to see the conclusion of this. And again, I think a lot of people like this movie. I think a ton of people are going to go see it. It's going to make Sony a whole bunch of box office and tighten that grip on Spider-Man for a longer period of time for them. But I just don't. I can't see how this is a smart move. Waiting all the way till March 2024.
Well, you're thinking creatively.
Yeah,
you're thinking creatively. Like this is, you're still in the zeitgeist within 6 months. Blah 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 blah. What you're not thinking about is financially.
Yeah.
And financially, it makes a whole lot more sense to wait an entire year.
Oh, they got to make it to the next financial quarter. Yeah, they don't want to put in the same one.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. Don't do that.
And you have to also squeeze as much money out of this first part as you can, so you can squeeze as much money as you can out of the second part, because it's 2 different financial years. So that's the reason why they're doing it the way it is.
Yeah, it's, money over art. I think sometimes it's how she rolls. But then again, that's kind of how we got this giant movie at the same time too. So it's like, you give and you get, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that is it, everybody. We'd like to hear what you think about Into the Spider-Verse. Shoot us an email over there at patreon.com/HMP. We'd like to hear from you. Sean, we got some crazy stuff going on. Next week, we are reviewing a movie from 1978. Tell us about it.
Oh, man. We are doing our very first episode of a sub-series that I like to call Shawnee Loves Spaceships. And what I have done is I've made a list of movies that I want to see that aren't well trodden over by other like movie podcasts and movie YouTube channels. And so I found this movie called A Message from Space, 1978. It's Japanese, and it is a movie where it seems like the Japanese might have heard about Star Wars, but they didn't know anything about it.
Might have heard about Star Wars. This feels like the most Star Wars rushed thing since Alien, or actually it's before Alien, so technically it's even beats that.
I think they had an idea, but I don't think that they had seen the movie.
Okay.
Is basically what I'm telling you. Like, it's kind of like the way that Marvel had to make the Star Wars comic book where they only saw stills. They couldn't actually watch the movie.
Put together something in your mind of what you think is going on in here.
Right. And so that's basically what this movie is. And it is so glorious. I cannot wait to review this movie and to talk about this movie. It is just the best, and it is a new sub-series of HMP that I like to call Sean-Z Like Spaceships.
So go check us out on YouTube there. A Message from Space, 1978, available on YouTube. So zero excuses for you to not watch it, and join us next week for that and so much more fun. Join Anime Dad. He's off a little bit, but subscribe to him there on the YouTubes and all that stuff. So subscribe to us on YouTube. Over 10,000 subscribers over for the HMP YouTube page. Unbelievable. I don't know how we did. It's just consistently posting. It's just dropping an episode. That's all it is. Because we don't.
That's literally what it is. It's just a new episode.
Drop something every week. Doesn't matter if they monetize it. Eventually, you'll get 10,000 followers. That's how I learned. And then you monetize it, and no one watches. It's like, son of a gun. That's how it all works. So do check all of that show out, and of course, all of our 30 question shows. Marvel 30 questions. We got Secret Invasion coming up awful soon. So check that out wherever you find finer podcasts. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for A Message from Space from 1978. For Sweet Sean's and Kovacs from the internet, the absent Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.